This is Duke University.
My work on human rights was inspired mainly in the post 9/11 era, especially at the beginning of the wars in Iraq and in Afghanistan, and when the U.S. administration was using a lot of rhetoric about freedom and democracy, and this idea that the Islamists hate us because we're free. And I was very intrigued by this because, as far as I know, according to my knowledge of Islamic thought, that there's actually quite a broad discourse about liberal ideas of freedom, of Islamic democracy, of equality, of rights and duties, especially like reciprocal rights and duties, and of human rights. So I started to investigate this idea a little bit more in depth. I mean, it was definitely a political project. I mean, partly defensive, saying like, hey, there is this discourse of rights and freedom and equality and democracy, like deep in Islamic thought. And I started to kind of excavate the origins of that, especially in the late 19th century, and then how that late 19th century thought of what's called the Islamic awakening has informed the Islamic awakening that's more recent of the last 30 years. So it was partially sort of an archaeological project of going back in time and trying to look at the origins of sort of liberal ideas of democracy, freedom, equality, women's rights in the late 19th century. But there was also a part of it of wanting to investigate how rights discourses are employed or deployed in different contexts and towards different means, and how that works. And I don't see them so much as like an adoption of Western ideas than a kind of reinterpretation of rights concepts within an Islamic idiom. So a lot of my work has focused on that. My recent book focused most specifically on Islamic notions of women's rights, women's equality, and women's emancipation, and especially this conceptualization of these concepts as coming with the beginning of Islam, and how these concepts were kind of projected back into time, read into the Quran, but also very much framed within an Islamic political discourse.
Produced by Duke University, online at duke.edu.